Okay, hello everyone. Okay, so let's talk about strings. Okay, so what are strings? Now, strings are a bit special, right? And so when you look at the primitive data types we've talked about, integers, bytes, shorts, longs, float, doubles, chars, booleans, when you look at all those primitive data types we've looked at, right? They are called primitive. That's their name, right? And we'll get into why basically what's a primitive data type. We'll get into that. But that's what they're called. But a string is not called a primitive data type. Or it's not a primitive data type to start with. It's special, okay? It's a special type of entity called an object. Now, I don't want to get into the details of classes and objects because that can get a bit confusing at this point. But we'll definitely get into what's an object and what's a class. But I want you to at least have an overview, basically have an idea of what a string is in a very general sense. Okay, so we can start working with them. And so a string is not a primitive data type. It's what's called an object, okay? An object has special information about it. And it can also do certain things. Now, you have seen strings. You've seen strings already. A string is basically, right? It's basically a series of characters joined together, right? And then surrounded with double quotations. So a series of characters jumbled together and then surrounded with double quotations. This is a string. This here is a string. The letters, or basically the characters in here, joined together is a string. So if I system.out.println here, and I, in double quotations, type in a bunch of characters, I basically type in here a string, and I'm printing out the string. When I compile this and I run it, I'm printing out the string. Now this is data, alright, right? You may think that it's just regular data, but a string is special. It's not a primitive data type. It's what's called an object. And an object basically has information about it. This string here has information about it. Information such as how many characters are there in this string, right? And also this can also do things. It can do special things. A string has what's called methods. Now we've heard the word methods. We've seen it in parts of a Java program and basically some other videos too. And a method is basically, and don't worry, we'll get into methods too into detail. I just want you to have an overview again of how strings work in a very general sense. So strings have information about them, like for example, how many characters are in this string. And they have methods. Okay, a method is simply one or more lines of code wrapped up together with quotation marks, with curly braces, not quotation marks, I'm sorry, curly braces, opening and closing curly braces, right? And then given a name. So we saw briefly that this is a main method. It has a name called main, and then it has one line of code. It's surrounded by opening and closing curly braces. So we learned, or we looked briefly at what a main method is. Strings have information about them, and they have methods, which are basically one or more lines of code wrapped up together with curly braces, opening and closing curly braces, and given a name. And when that name is used, the series of lines of code, or basically the one or more lines of code, they get executed, and they perform an action on the string, right? On the string object. And so that's why a string is special. You may think it's just regular data, right? It is regular data, but it's called an object. It's not a primitive data type like an integer or a double or a float. It's called an object because it's a bit special. It has information about it, and it has methods that perform operations on the string itself. Operations such as we can call a method, or we can use a method that is going to basically tell us, right? It's going to tell us how many characters are in the string. Now the string here has information about it. Let's say how many characters are right. But then the method is now going to prompt it. It's going to ask it, how many characters do you have? And it's going to tell us the characters it has. It's going to tell us information about itself. It's going to perform or call the methods on the string itself and use basically the information. Okay, basically, for example, we can call the method and then ask how many characters it has. We are using the method on the information about this object. Okay, and asking for it, asking about it. Right. So just know that. I just want you to have or know this about strings. Now, strings, okay, have to be created. Okay, we said strings are object, right? Strings are object, and the object, these string objects. So this here is a one string object. String objects have to be created from what's called a class. Again, I don't want to get into the details of what a class is and what objects are. Know that string objects have to be created from what's called a class. Okay, think of a class as a mother, right? And think of an object as a baby. So the class is created by the programmer, and then anyone including the programmer, him or herself, can create an object from the class that the programmer defined or designed. And so this is data, and in our programs we're going to need strings. And so the people who designed Java have created a huge library which is called the Java API. We've heard this word a couple of times also. Don't worry, we'll get into the details of it. But the Java API stands for Application Programming Interface. Don't worry too much about the terms, but it's a huge library of code, right? And so the people who designed the Java language have created what's called a string class, and out of the string class we create string object, right? In the string class, the people who designed it specify the kind of information that the string object should have. And they also specify the methods that we can use to perform operations on the string objects themselves. And so the string class is basically some kind of code, okay, that has been designed by the people who created Java. And out of the string class, we create string object. The string object will have information about them, and then they'll have methods, okay, that we can use to perform we can use to perform operations on the string object themselves. So strings, okay, are what's called objects. They have special information about them. They can do things. They can do certain things. Okay, they have extra power. They are not like primitive data types. Okay. And so this is what I wanted you to at least have about or know about strings. We will get more into it. We will see more of how strings work, but this is an overview of strings. Okay, it's a bit special, right? It's different from primitive data types. We'll see how it works, but I want you to at least have a feel of it. Okay, and so don't worry too much about the terms that we mentioned. I just want you to have an overview. We'll get into the details of what classes, objects, methods are, okay, the Java API, and you'd have a clear understanding. So in the next video, we'll see more about the strings. All right, thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll see you next time with the next video. All right then, bye-bye.